All right, we'll officially call this meeting to order. Clerk, can you roll call, please?
Mayor,
Here.
sorry, I don't have a list this time. Chrisman? Here. Cruz?
Here.
I'm so very sorry, remind me. of your name.
Nick. Henry.
Thank you. Trustee Gardner.
Joanne Cole.
Dustin.
Craig Birdie.
Mark Howard. Now, Ron, you're officially on the task force too. You should be at the table. I know it's right in front of the camera, but.
Dice will be hidden.
Ron Gaines.
John Devonde.
So,
Community member.
all right, thank you, everybody. So for the group, it's officially voting. We need to do quick minutes approval. So we have a motion to approve the animal control task force minutes from the previous meeting on August 20th.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? All opposed? The motion carries. All right, agenda item, review the city's current animal control services and data collected over the last 6 months since bringing the service in-house, and review if the current services are adequately meeting residents' expectations and whether or not other options may be necessary. So just quick to kick it off, thank you everyone for coming to the second meeting. I know from the first one, we kind of just level set everything. Councilor Ganfield, did you have a chance to? Okay, so, and then the main thing today was really wanted to dig into some of the different options, numbers, and kind of see what we want to look at as, generally speaking, that we won't finalize everything today, but just getting a high level direction on what direction do we want to take and have staff working on going forward. So, would you guys want to kick it off? I know you've been putting together some information.
Yeah, I've just got a little intro and Chief Howard actually has, most of the information, but really kind of like the mayor said, we reviewed the last 7 or 8 months, our processes, training, the equipment that was purchased, our communication with the Humane Society. I think from the meeting last week or 2 weeks ago, the process of picking up dead animals with Public Works is going very well. I don't think we've identified any challenges there or problems. Waterloo Police Department is going through a similar process where they're taking over animal control duties. And so they're evolving right now. And Chief Howard's been talking with Chief Duncan about that. But Chief Howard's put together, we worked on a proposal. He's done the huge majority of the work on it. A proposal of adding some part-time staff to focus just on animal control, help with that training piece that's missing, to be our internal trainers, be our liaison with the Humane Society. And one thing as a director, important to me that it stays generally within our budget that we already have. So, the money is important. And it would really, it's designed, it would cover about 60 hours of the 168 hours of the week and identify those busiest hours of the day, that 10 p.m. to about 6 p.m. that we could cover about 6 days a week. And so I know Chief Howard's going to cut through some details of that, but that's kind of the overview of it.
So, and it's just a proposal, it's vague, but we really looked at this. I don't.
Okay.
No, it's just my notes. After speaking with Waterloo a little bit and the issues they've had on their startup, our call volumes are definitely different, but I really think I want it to stay in-house. I want it to stay with public safety. What our proposal is that we'd hire 2 part-time personnel who would work directly for our support services captain. Their designated focus would be nothing but animal control and be our liaison to the Cedar Bend Humane Society. They will be animal control trained throughout whatever training is possible that we can get for them. They'll also be responsible for training our department in all animal control matters. Intentions would be for, as I came up with numbers last time, it was around 8 hours a week that we spend roughly working animal control calls. So you're talking about somebody being there 8 hours a day, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. So we also think there would be an opportunity for them to help inspections and possibly code enforcement to fulfill the downtimes. Cost wise, I just by going with what Waterloo's had to do and the turnover until they finally got a wage that they actually could employ somebody or that made it employable on a part-time basis. I started around $20. Lisa in accounting, Lisa Roding, helped me with that if you included benefits. So to have these 2 part-time employees working roughly 29 hours a week, it's about $72,000 a year. That's benefits included. You'd have still our Cedar Bend costs that would be added to that. But there are reductions, we've, just our new ordinance of going from 5 days to 3 days, there's a reduction in our Cedar Bend costs. We're also, with having our own scanners now, we're locating owners ourselves. We've had 6 just here in the last couple of weeks where we've had an owner come to the police department and redeem their animal, where we didn't have to take that animal to the Cedar Bend Humane Society. And that's just as we're getting used to the tools that we've purchased. Where that average cost, I think last year we had 58 animals redeemed just at Cedar Bend, where those costs would all go toward, we would hope at some point go toward reduction of what cost increase there would be to hire these 2 part-time animal control specialists. First of all, the first thing we'd have to do is obviously write a job description, which then therefore would go in front of the elected body, the council, and would have to approve that job description. We do have future goals with it, and that's possibly we'd like to see a staff reduction in our community service officers and actually reduce that by 2. If we did that at their start rate, and at 29 hours a week, that's a savings of actually about $45,000 a year. That would go to that. And then we also know that somewhere down the line, and this is the goal, future down the road, we need to make our second office assistant a full-time position. And at current rate, to whomever that would be, that's about a cost increase of about $19,000. So roughly, when I said the $72,000, we'd be a little below that if those cost reductions came in place somewhere down the road. This is not something that can take place tomorrow. This is obviously a plan that's going to take time to get in place, to get the training done, to get everything in place. When I think of logistics of it, we've already purchased the equipment, and I had a list. I do have a list with me. We've got a kennel that we've purchased. It was almost $1,000. We've got the 4 catch poles. We've got the 2 chip readers we've purchased. We've got safety bite resistant gloves that we purchased. The top load crates that we use for small animals and cats we've purchased. We've actually, I didn't realize they were on back order, but the small animal or cat baskets that were recommended to us to catch cats are on back order, but we have ordered them. We have vehicle disinfectant cleaner that we purchased that we use constantly. And then the safety leashes and leads that were recommended to us by Cedar Bend, we bought several of them for each squad car and for a couple at the PD. So equipment-wise, the equipment's there. I have suggested that we look internally for a vehicle, and that's all logistics that can be handled down the road. But there's not a lot of startup here except for the personnel, the training, as that goes forward. So vaguely I get it, but it's really just touching where we would like to go forward with animal control.
Chief Howard, could you repeat for me where that 19K that's making an office assistant full-time?
Yes, so we have an office assistant that's part-time right now. And with the reduction of CSOs down the road, we would need her full-time to cover those daytime hours that are currently covered by community service officers during the week.
Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of the puzzle, putting the whole puzzle together.
Yeah, our front window has 1 full-time office assistant, 1 part-time office assistant. And then it's often supplemented by college students, community service officers. And what we're proposing is reduce a couple of them, move one of the other office assistants to full-time. So.
Question then, can either one of you explain, you were saying support services, community services, how does that compare and contrast to like a PSL, police, fire, predominantly police and fire? Are they overlapping all these duties
These people they wouldn't have either certification.
as a police officer or
Right.
a fire?
Right.
So you call them support services. What do they?
So they would fall under the support services captain as far as a supervisor, but they would work directly with animal control. They would be animal control specialists. And what we're looking at is, well, how do we fulfill, because there's months in the winter where they're not going to do but about 8 hours animal control. Well, how do we fulfill that? Well, we have needs in inspection, we have needs at code enforcement where they can assist.
Yeah.
But they won't carry, if we police certified them, we just lose them to another department, keeping them part-time. All we'd be doing is training people for other departments.
Okay.
This is a civilian position.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah,
I was trying to compare and contrast there.
And our support services is, we have a support services captain, and that position supervises really all the things that are not patrol, not fire, and not detective unit.
Not arresting and
Yeah.
chasing
No,
criminals.
it's all the
No, and police,
paperwork, logistics, yeah.
yeah, and I looked at it as the reduction of what it would do for patrol is you're reducing a lot of that paperwork. So we get facts from the hospital of an animal bite. I'll give you an example. Sometimes those calls will take up to 3 hours by the time the officer goes and meets with the victim. It happened yesterday. We get a fax from the hospital. This person was at the hospital last night for a bite call, for an animal bite. We go meet with the victim, then we go back, we do the report. We have to send the report to the Blackhawk County Health Department. Then we go back and meet with the owner of the animal. We do the 10-day quarantine. And then the officer has to go back and write a report. That is the kind of stuff that wouldn't be needed by an officer anymore. Where the officers would still come in, obviously, is the issuance of citations, neglect arrest, which we've always done. That's not going to change anything patrol has done in the past.
Things for insurance company purposes, I suppose. So they come into play a lot with the bites. Liability.
I don't know anything about that. That's usually civil part. Now, we may be called into civil. We haven't yet. We've only been doing it 6 months in civil.
They
courts
may
usually
want copies of the report or things
Yeah.
like that.
two- yeah, so-
I'm saying liability.
Civil courts are usually 2 years out, so we might be starting to get called to court 2 years from now, but we haven't yet.
Okay.
8 months into it.
Well, sounds good. I mean, code enforcement inspections and this would all mesh together, overlap. Sounds
Different
good.
with inspections, we're talking about fire inspections, helping the fire inspector who's out, the fire shifts go out doing fire inspections, but we have one fire inspector who's doing all those inspections
And
around town.
Rental.
And Councilman Cruz, I did do what you asked. I did go back and went through, it's up to 575 now calls. And we've had 19% of them are wild animals.
Okay.
And I just went through and read each call till it was able to determine about 19% of our calls this year have been wild animals. Now, some of those calls that caught my attention today were, we had 3 calls about a fawn being on its own without its mother. We had a call last week of a dead crow on a porch, and they wanted us to come take it and throw it away for them. But a lot of them, the majority of them are in the spring, and they're sick raccoons, which has completely always been that way. And that's, but we did have 19% of them were wild animal calls.
What do we propose on that, or what are we doing with wild animal, like raccoon, skunk?
Well, we had one yesterday. I think it was yesterday. We had a woodchuck under a house. We gave them the number to a conservation group that comes in and takes care of that. There was an estimate given. They didn't like the estimate, so they called us back, and we just told them that's something we're not going to go under a house looking for a woodchuck. So that's a private owner's
Let it
problem.
wander on typically, but.
Yeah.
I mean, they live in nature.
And this might be a question for you guys, just expertise more. So do you know how long it takes to get someone quote unquote fully certified in animal control? I'm guessing you would have the list of the certifications and
And
things,
most of
but
those you can do online, I think, you can do a lot of that online. Some of it is, hands-on, that type of thing. So I know Waterloo, they hired their officers, and I know a lot of their officers actually get certified as they're working, like they'll have a couple of their new officers. One would be working on, they'd be out training with us. The other one would be, online doing their certification, that type of thing.
Yep.
So that's kind of how I think, don't quote me on that, but that's my understanding, just because we were kind of involved with helping them train. So yeah.
is that, and I know this is asking, it's hard to tell, just depending how quickly people take on the classes probably, but is it like a couple months to go through all the certifications that there are?
It just depends how far you want to go. I mean, like, even when you get into the higher NACA training, like, some of that is strictly around like chemical mobilization, that type of thing. So like, I don't know that like the Waterloo Animal Control officers, like, we've done that, but I don't
Yeah.
know if, they have taken like NAC 4 or whatever for that. So, but I do know they'll take you through like animal handling. A lot of it is kind of your investigation piece, that type of thing, handling that, handling all of that kind of thing. So, that's really good. I mean, that's a really good resource for training, in our opinion. So.
Do you have any idea on cost, how much training would cost?
I haven't looked into it that far yet. I just wanted to get some blessing before we go. I simply looked at how we think it would work,
Sure.
at least starting now.
Okay.
And it's one of them things that, could grow or could shrink. I don't know, but this was believe it or not, a lot of work went into this, and where we thought this is a viable plan that actually we feel could benefit the animal control side greatly, but also in other areas where we could use some assistance through a couple civilian employees.
Definitely.
I think, and it's been a while, but I feel that each NACA class you're looking at probably depending on what level between, it's probably gonna be around $1,500 or something like that.
Okay.
So per person. I mean, and that's been a while since I've done those, so it may be more than that.
Sure.
We
had
have,
a couple weeks for one of those classes.
It's online, so I mean, you can drag it out, you can, I mean, it just depends, how quickly you go through that, so. And I think that's why the Waterloo has their officers do it on the job, because then they can kind of dictate how much time they spend doing it, so.
we have, travel and education training budgets in both our police division and fire division. And if you put the two of them together, it's probably well over $100,000. So we have room at half capacity. If this person would need to travel and go to even expensive training, we have money for it. So.
And I mean, you guys were talking about the hours, so we're trying to kind of staff it, we're just saying 10 to 6.
Well, looking through all the calls, Mayor, those are our busy, I think that's, now if we have we would, once we have the job description approved and that, then, we obviously look at, is there a call-in element to this?
Yeah.
Where we've got a major call that we don't want patrol to handle. We want that expert in here. That's gonna have to be a component of this, when we get to that part.
So outside the hours of 10 to 6, then regular patrol will have basic knowledge of what to do.
Yeah, they'll be trained. That's one of the roles of these, and will be the training of our
Of the
officers
rest of them, okay.
throughout the year also.
And then would these individuals become a POC if they want to be? Is that still a thing we do much of, or do we have capacity of that already?
We haven't talked about that. I don't, I mean,
Or
that's
reserves
just,
or whatever
that's
it is
just
different.
maybe something in the future.
Yeah.
We really haven't focused on that, and that, my fear of any, and it just depends on who we can get. I don't know what the employee, if it's a college type student, my fear of doing something like that is we're certifying somebody for another department. But if it's an older person who comes in with some experience and this is what they want to do, and all of a sudden they're like, hey, I want to be a reserve, that's a conversation for down the road.
I'm just thinking if there's not enough work for them to do, picking up animals, that they could be doing something else.
Right.
And support the whole department.
It's gonna be civilian side though.
Because then they do start crossing over a whole different level
Well,
of
obviously, what they
training.
could be doing
Have to
with-
work on that, I guess. I don't know how
Yeah.
much overlap and all that.
Does it seem like just from the inspection side, is this something that would help enhance then like how quickly we're able to get them done, take some workload?
Oh, I
onto
think,
these
in
positions and-
the fire chiefs here, one thing our fire inspector, our fire marshal, who's taking care of the rental units and managing the complicated inspections. Right now he's very busy. And so having somebody to help with some of the inspections, so he could focus on some of the bigger, as they're building out new buildings, things, that would be a good thing. So yeah, there's absolutely work to do. So.
Those inspections are every 3 years. When is this rented?
I think with commercials commercial inspections occur every year and rental inspections every 3 years.
You mentioned it's not exactly with the animal control, but the replacement of community services officers. Is that the plan, that would be supplanting this for budget? And is that a little short-sighted, given that we're trying to figure out what we're gonna do for mental health crises and things of that nature, if we might add something there?
Well, the community service officers are college students who are interested in fire or police, who help with the administrative tasks in the office, and they're there in the off hours. Our thinking is that if we increase that part-time admin assistant possibly to full-time, then we're able to possibly reduce 1 or 2 CSOs for those hours.
Similar title, not at all the same function.
And the advantage of, the same person is you get that same person who comes in every day 8 to 5, who knows the tasks and the calls coming in. Those college students, it's a constant rotation. Really they answer full phones and get people to resources within the police and fire. But it's a constant, there's always a turnover with them, so.
And unlike, other departments, community service officers who go out, do parking, ours are at the station. And what it allows is for us to have our supervisors out on the street. And that way we don't have watch command at the PD all the time. We're out in the cars where we're, and so they're basically an office assistant on off hours that handle assistance with calls, with phone calls that come in, and then officers with reports, running reports for officers. So it's an office duty, unlike other communities where you see community service officers out within the public.
Any thoughts for just from a resident standpoint? So say they have an issue, they need to call in to animal control, get some support. Would they, I don't know if we've gotten to this detail yet, but would they call through the normal non-emergency public safety line still, or would we have a separate line that goes to the animal control team?
We haven't got that far yet. I know, with Waterloo, they were gonna be on the radio. It didn't work out, so now they carry cell phones. And I believe it's watch commander, the supervisor working. It says, they'll call them and say, hey, we need you here. And that's kind of how they're handled. Still coming through dispatch. And then it's on-duty supervisor that's actually calling for animal control. So,
Mark, what do you see our part in that, like as far as training goes, or do you have other thoughts with other people to help train? I mean,
Oh, no,
I know NAC is like, or whatever's great, but like that still doesn't take them out in the, like what we always step in to help your people is like when they're out in the field needing something.
yeah, and that's why I put that on here. They'd be our main liaison to y'all. I see our relationship actually growing. And maybe not at cost wise, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying as far as training, we're gonna be looking to you for guidance as we have for equipment, for training. If you offer field training where they're out with you, I mean, that's the kind of stuff we're gonna be looking at doing. We want to make them that's what we wanted. We want the right people doing it. We just, when we put this together, a lot of thought went into this, but we didn't want to overstep ourselves without our elected body saying, yeah, that's a good job. Let's, but that is our plan. Yeah, no, it's just, we're going to count on you is what it is, Christy. We're going to count on Cedar Bend for the educational piece, the training piece, and then these people would be our obvious liaisons to you, where we have direct communication with you and your people.
And I think that, from our aspect, I think having less, well, we've talked about that, having less people do the job is probably better,
Right.
I know for us with, I will just say from experience working with animal control in the process that they've gone through to get to where they're at and where we've kind of helped out there. I think they have a pretty good model right now. The only benefit that they have is I think they have people that have already done animal control, out in the field. I think they went through some struggling because the people that were the people that were in charge didn't know any more than the officers. So I know they've kind of went through that process of, training, but I mean, I think they have a pretty good, I think it's working fairly well from what I see. And like our relationship, probably the only challenges that we've had is since it's a civilian position, like I know, they've had people that have applied that aren't in good standing with us, like they've had issues with animals or, like they've had people that applied for them that they're kind of on our list because I don't want to say animal abuse, but borderline, things like that, or, employees that we've had to let go because of issues with things. And so then, then that makes it complicated because then if they hire that person, they have to come to our property. So just things like that was probably the only issue, but then we started kind of working with the people that hired and we would help them do background checks and stuff as far as on the animal side. So where we don't get that with the police officers, obviously, but when we do have civilians, you always run into some, some of that. So a couple of people that applied, I'm like, do you know that they were like arrested for dog chain up? So I mean, those are the only issues that we kind of had as far as them hiring, if that kind of makes sense. So not saying that we're not going to allow people on our property, but like for us, it's like, well, I don't want to give somebody keys to my back room that we've had issues with the animals. So, which you guys may not have access to that unless, but we're always willing to work with you and share that stuff. But I think the model itself works really well because the police office or the police department oversees that. They also get to help with some of the, like if there's neglect issues or whatever, they can kind of help walk through that, but they're not the ones out there. There's only a couple people, 3, I think is what they have 3 full-time people now, that actually do their animal control. So, because I don't think Jeff goes out in the field much. I think he's, but so from what we see that I can't talk on the cost aspect, but as far as I feel like it seems to work pretty well for them.
We modeled this after my conversation with them.
Yep.
It's just with our call volume compared to theirs,
Yep.
ours is scaled down considerably,
Yep.
so.
Another
Question I have, last time we talked about pet owners that don't care, they let their dogs run and don't retrieve them. Can we develop an ordinance that would hold them accountable for costs of dealing with animals that they don't take care of? That's something that you've seen in places.
I mean, I think it just depends what you want to accomplish, but I mean, yeah, I think you can create an ordinance to pretty much accommodate anything, you want.
Trying
But
to recoup costs.
No,
what
I
I'm thinking.
I think, I
So-
remember right from our last conversation, one concern was like, well, if you penalize people too much for coming to pick up their dogs, they're just gonna stop coming to pick them up.
And we talked about that. I know when you guys were first gonna implement pickup fees, like I know Mark and I had a conversation. I think you guys had looked at like $100 or what have you. And although I don't disagree with that, but I'm like, we're gonna be stuck with a lot of dogs. So, I mean, it's just kind of one thing, and again, this is a different conversation, but one thing that I kind of has been up and coming is like, I know you guys charge people to license their pets. In theory, I think maybe half of your citizens do, the other half don't. One thing that you could implement instead of a city license is require anybody who owns a pet to microchip it. Then the person only has to pay a fee once in the lifetime of a pet. But so you're not gonna get yearly licenses, but to be quite honest with you, the upkeep that you guys to pay for the tags and,
We
to
did-
issue those and all
We
that.
did they just passed the ordinance that if they're caught and don't have a chip, it is
Yeah.
mandatory chipping now.
And that's only if they come through us,
Right.
but yeah.
Mm.
But I
But if we pick up a dog and it doesn't have a chip, our policy says they have to bring it out to you.
Oh, okay.
So mandatory,
Yep.
if we pick up an animal, a cat or a dog, and it's not chipped, it has to come to
Right.
Cedar Bend. And then that cost does go to not to us. They automatically pay the chipping cost per ordinance.
Unless they abandon it.
Well, yes.
And then it becomes for adoption.
That becomes my problem yet.
And we did,
Inventory.
Yes.
Daryl, that ordinance change that just went through too does have the redemption fee now.
Okay.
So we are recouping some costs that we didn't used to. and That just passed. So
About 15.
Yeah.
It's good. And I think that's a good policy to have. I mean, in reality, like, we do get animals that we've never dealt with. I mean, we do. If people accidentally, the pet gets loose, it's like, oh my gosh, my pet ended up at the shelter. But I would say at least half, if not, I would say at least 65% of the animals that we deal with come from the same people over and over again.
Right.
And there's still people, if I would look back, are the people we dealt with 5 years ago. Like, that's just the reality of it. So it's unfortunate, but
And we had, Daryl, so we had 58 animals redeemed last year through Cedar Bend. Probably several from the PD, but not near what so
Meaning
58.
you brought them in and then somebody claimed them?
Yes, yeah, so that would be $50, that's 2,500, whatever it is. We would obviously have this year that was not part of last year due to the new ordinance.
Pay for some of your equipment.
Unfortunately, animal control is very similar to policing. You just can't recover all your costs.
Right.
It's one of the services that
Well, if you put a little money behind as a deterrent, keep your dog in the yard or whatever.
you would hope that helps. Yeah.
Usually pocketbook.
and we've seen some of that. I mean, not so much with your city, but with Waterloo. When that was first implemented, when they first implemented it, like some of the people that we would just see the dog 5, 6, 7 times a year. And then when those pickup fees went into place, they didn't come get their dog. But we haven't seen a new one from them either. So, I mean,
Well,
you
you're getting a wanted result, I guess. you'd say. Pushing behavior in the right direction. maybe.
I know one question I think for the elected in the room, as you guys are moving forward with it, because I want to make sure, yes, important, I don't want to push our budget just for the sake of saying, let's just spend more money, but I do want to make sure we do it right. So I appreciate you guys trying to keep it within budget, but I think question for us elected is, I'd like to give direction, yes, they can be done in budget quality, great, but I also don't want them to feel they can't come to us and at least request if it's gonna be done what we think is the appropriate way to get it done right.
Yeah.
Here's what we would need.
I agree, like a vehicle if that's needed, or I know that obviously the process of tracking right now, I know you talked about the new software is incoming, so if there isn't an element of that within the new software, then consideration for better tracking. I think there's just a few things that, yeah, if it's outside of budget, like at
Right.
least.
Well, the
consider
tracking,
it.
what we were referring to is CAD, and that's a countywide system. That's
Yeah.
actually in the 9 years of development that we're finally getting this, we hope this coming
It's
spring.
millions and millions of dollars.
Which is, means it's
So
out of date now.
Well, it means we don't have any control on adding, doesn't mean we couldn't create something.
Yeah.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that would not be part of the CAD system, but we do log all calls and that would go through CAD still, so.
Sure.
I think we're sitting good on a vehicle. We can work with Public Works Department. We have a vehicle to trade and, I think really if we got 6, 8 months down the road and we were looking at something, probably the question would be, was covering 60 hours a week good enough? And was 2 employees the appropriate number?
Okay.
I think that's probably where we'd have a discussion. So
Mhm.
I think the conversation that we had is this program's evolving and we know it's gonna continue to evolve. So we may come to you right now with some asks, but those asks may change over, in 6 months when we come back to you. We may have to say, hey, this part of our plan didn't work as well, so we'd like to tweak it to here.
Mhm.
So,
One thing I have been thinking, if this direction we go, one thing I wanted to look at is, sure, are there things, and this might be a question for you guys too, that we can be doing proactively if these staff have some time, kind of like with our community liaisons, our school resource officer, that they can be engaging with the public on things that improve animal safety in the community, things that improve animal welfare, going to events, kind of intentionally trying to promote effective animal practices and really build us as a pet friendly community. I know that's a whole different side than just the enforcement piece. But if we're gonna have people specializing in this, I didn't know if it was something we could have them doing some proactive work too.
I think we sure could. We have a community engagement lieutenant, which is a fairly new position for us, and that person has capacity too. So it's a area that I definitely would need to learn about and, learn from professionals. But yeah, anything we can help get the message out and help. Yeah, we've already got somebody in place that could help with that, so.
Yeah, so our community engagement lieutenant works directly for the support services captain.
Okay.
So it's
So
kind of
and that's
saying.
his role is any type of community event we have involvement in. That's the first instructions I gave him. If it's a community event, make sure we have representation there, and he's doing great. So it would fall totally under that. That's why we wanted it under the support services captain, because that's where it would, and that's the type of people we want. I tried to listen to what y'all told me this last time, that of the expertise it was going to take. So that's what we're suggesting here, is that we have 2 civilians. We think we can do it part-time with our call volume and have those expertise. We just don't know it's going to take time. That's why we have goals, future goals. We're looking down the road. But as we go forward, we get a job description approved. It's probably going to adapt over the next several months before we get where we feel comfortable.
Do you think you're looking for people that already have experience, or are you thinking about people that you don't? A reason I ask is I know I said in an interview is when we did the Waterloo people, and they had a struggle. I mean, and even at what they paid, was a little more than what you guys were paying. So I was just kind of curious,
I think I would like to have a job description
Yeah.
first, and then, of course, the answer to that is yes.
Yeah.
Experience would be great, but people willing to learn that have a knack for animals, and a love for animals certainly would be part of that element.
See, just from your guys' experience, is this the type of thing we can find part-time people for that?
Good luck. I'm not saying you can't. I mean, like I said, I like the protocol, but I just know at $20 an hour, like Waterloo could not find that. So, and I know
do you know where they're at now, $1.50?
don't
They're,
quote me on this, but I think they're like 28, 27.
Because
Does that
as we
sound
put
right?
the job description together, that may be something when we come to.
But I do think they're full-time also.
3 of them are, a supervisor and 2.
Does that sound right? Is that what they told you? I know they've switched, I know they've increased their.
We stayed away from numbers, to be honest with you. I didn't want to get in because of there's not a representative here and I didn't feel that's fair to the water
Right, I
police
agree.
department. So, but what I wanted to know was I wanted to see what it looked like, where their struggles were.
Process.
I won't deny that they had to raise the income. I don't know what it's at. It's two full-timers, a full-time supervisor, not Jeff, who's
And Jeff,
a police department. And then they do have, I think, 2 to 3 part-timers now. That is,
And the only reason I say that is because we interviewed some people to work with us, and they said they got offered a position there at a higher rate, and that's what they told us. So, I mean, that's,
yeah.
but other than that, like I said, I know they had to raise their rate, but I just know what we struggle with, with the people that are trained in animal control, that type of thing, so. But I mean, Waterloo's done a very good job, their people that they've hired were not, I mean, they sent their people out to us, they worked with our people, like help them clean kennels, handle animals, that type of thing, to do animal handling. And then I know they have one person, Ryan, that's been in animal control for a while there, and so he's done a pretty good job, but yeah.
Chief, if I may, what do you envision for the hours of coverage in those 2 part-timers? And what do you envision for the vehicle situation?
Well, if I had it my way, there's some Ford Rangers around the city that city owns with some toppers, something like that we would swap for. We've got an SUV that we don't use much. Probably they'd only work one at a time, so they'd only need the one vehicle. Being part-timers, they'd cover probably Monday through Saturday. Right now, we're looking at 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. and in those hours. So, but vehicle-wise, the director's right. We'll work with Public Works. We'll figure something out internally.
We got good training.
Logistics-wise, with Christie's help over the last 8 months, we've bought the things we know we need, and we have that. And that's why I want to keep this internally. We've done a ton of work on this in the last 8 months. And I know we've had a couple incidents that didn't go well, but when you do what I do and sit down and go through 575 calls, we've also had a lot of patience, and these officers have done some great work when it comes to not having a ton of training on animals, so.
And actually, your equipment, it'll be better because it'll all be in one place as opposed to scattered about your
car.
vehicles, so. Correct.
One other question, is this within scope to talk about, Chris, you referenced earlier, some communities will do, instead of a paid license, they might do a animal registration to gain more compliance of knowledge. I think part of the reason we do licensure is to know where animals are in case of an outbreak or anything, things of that nature. But is that something that's within scope for this conversation to talk about our ordinance around licensing our pets, permitting to the dog parks, et cetera? How could we gain more compliance about knowing where animals are within our community?
Probably a little outside of scope because we don't really have anything in the published minutes about what, if we'd be discussing ordinances, but
What we anticipated happening, Mayor, is if this group gives the okay, Chief Howard would go back and give a presentation to full council, maybe with some more details that are in there. I think that'd probably be something we could bring up there as well.
I do think those types of things might be nice if we've got some people that are specifically just focused on the animal control could work with you guys and if have recommendations on ordinance changes and areas that we can improve how we manage a lot of those things.
Yeah, I predominantly bring it up as the reference that there are those that aren't paying it, that's sure. And any enforcement has to be in line with the code, otherwise it's worthless code.
Well, and then what we see too, I mean, more so Waterloo, but like, it's kind of not fair because the people that are forced to get licenses are the people that animal control has contact with. So they're not gonna just go down the street and like, if you get in trouble with your dog, they're gonna make you do a city license. If you never do, you're never gonna be on the radar. You can go years without one. So it's really not, it's not effective. A lot of people get licenses because it's the thing to do, but we know probably more don't than do. So, but
Yeah.
from an animal welfare standard, I guess I don't know how this would work for city, but I think you should just nix all your licensing and require anybody who owns a dog has to have, or cat has to have a microchip. Number one, that's gonna make everybody's job so much easier. Any stray that shows up, you'll be able to track it, whether the people come claim it or not, but you're gonna know exactly who it belongs to.
And keep their addresses updated with
Yeah.
the chip.
But I mean, there's no perfect system, but you're not gonna have that annual income either from your licenses, which I guess I can't answer that, how much you really pull off of that or not, so.
How much are we not
I
getting?
guess we're not getting rich off it.
Well,
Yeah.
and then you have to
If
get,
that's net revenue neutral, we're lucky.
but then look at the manpower you spend doing it, and then, you know, like because we sell your licenses also, so we know, you know, so, I mean, if you mandated that as a city, that it's like, if you own a pet, it has to be microchipped and registered, you know, that's a national registry, so like, anybody can tap into that at any given time. I mean, obviously, if you get rid of your pet, you're gonna have to re-register it, but I would think your citizens would like that, because it's once in the lifetime of a pet. They could choose either come to us, a vet clinic, wherever. It's once in the lifetime of a pet opposed to every year. It may help your rehome. I mean, from a shelter, it'd be wonderful, because then that means pretty much every animal that comes to us is microchipped, so. You'll have some that fall through the cracks, but, and your litter licensing, I know you guys don't do that, but Waterloo does that. They make people who have litters, like breed, like license, register those. That has been a big help, so.
Okay, and I think then, big question for us is, are we comfortable with giving the direction? And I think the question for you guys too is, do we feel this model will actually address and provide the type of service we expect? If so, then we can look to give that direction. I know it seemed like the next step would be to have staff put more details together, more fleshed out proposal, and bring it back to council as a kind of official recommendation on behalf of the task force of what we think would be the next steps. What direction do we want to give?
I think with the dedicated expertise, that adds an enhancement to what we're doing today. Obviously, there's still backup for the overlapping coverage, but the hours where we're getting the most calls would be accommodated within this, and it's possible to do it within budget. I think it's a good next step that we try. It may not be exactly what it's going to be in 2 years. I don't fully acknowledge that, but I think I'd be on board with trying this because it gains us the expertise and takes the burden off of the rest of our public safety personnel most of the time.
Christy, what did you look into or consider at all what it would look like for it to come from Humane Society?
I mean, obviously, we could do it. I mean, it would not be a very hard thing for us to do. We've done it in the past. I don't think I could hit your budget. Just because, you know, for me, and again, I have not sat down and put all the figures together, but we would probably have more startup costs because I can't go pull a vehicle from city limits. You know, but, you know, so for us, just roughly, you're probably looking at between 300 to 350,000 a year, but that is including what you pay us for animals. So right now you pay us so much so much per animal. And depending on what we bring in for animals, that fluctuates. So, I mean, that would include that. We wouldn't charge you per animal anymore. It would just be, you know, that would be the fee. And that would be, I don't remember what I jotted down. I think I jotted 3 people down. I don't know if I would need that.
Yeah.
But, you know, anytime I'm trying to put something down on paper that is like, just based off of my knowledge of expenses, this has no research really into it, I'm gonna go high. So, because, you know, that's the biggest issue is like, you would want to be able to have the staff. I would say that this model would work well with what they're proposing. I mean, for us, I think it's just you have the people that are dedicated to that. The only difference I think we would probably have maybe over that model is I already have the people that are trained and have, I mean, I would have 2 people right now that I would think of off the top of my head that I would put into that position that had probably been there for 8 years. So we wouldn't have that component. We're part of the Iowa Federation of Humane Societies. I mean, we just have a little bit more, you know, animal welfare knowledge and that component, but that's not saying that I mean, so I do think having a humane society or an animal organization oversee animal control, I personally feel you get a little bit better service as far as the animals, but I'm not saying that we should do it over you. You know, I know the other shelters that we work with and, the same thing, they do the animal control and there's different perks that you will get having an animal welfare organization do that. But I'm not saying there's anything wrong with this. I'm just saying that, you know, we probably couldn't do it for I don't know what your budget is, but I don't know that I can do it for that. So,
Because Christie, I do have she kind of gave a
yeah,
proposal.
you
And
can,
it's, yeah,
please know, like I said, that is just, there's not much resource, you know, into doing this, so.
and because that,
And what last year we did pay for the services we used.
I want to say, I want to say it was like, I think it was between, it was like 60-some thousand maybe. I don't remember. I apologize. I have on here $75,000 animal care. But again, you know, that's gonna be kind of high. Now, if this is something the city said, hey, we're really interested in you guys doing this, then I would give you not this. This would be something that you would actually get a detailed, you know. Correct. Well, it'd be like, this would be the proposal, so.
literacy, you want to try to-
So yeah, I mean, and if you can see, I just roughly, just on my knowledge, you know, of business expenses, kind of just listed the stuff that we would have to, you know, pay in there. I have 3 staff members. I'll be honest with you, we could probably run it with 2. I'd probably do 1 full-time, 1 part-time. Obviously myself would have to kind of oversee or whatever, but I mean, the staff I would put in place, they're pretty seasoned staff. I mean, you know, it's not like they would have to have like a supervisor, you know, over animal control. So, you would maybe have more longevity. I mean, again, I think their proposal is very good. I'm not saying we would never have staff problems. In today's age, it seems like everybody has staff problems.
Yeah.
But even if one of my animal control people quit, like pretty much anybody in my facility could pick up and handle animal control until we hired somebody. So, I mean, so you would have that, you know, that would be a plus, that it's not like you're sitting here like, oh my gosh, now. And I just see that Waterloo has done that before. They went through a pretty rough patch where they're like, well, we have 1 person, you know, so. And then in order for them to hire somebody, there's not that many people out there that are trained animal control people, you know, that know that. So then you'd have to, you know, kind of start over with that. So those would be the pluses, but I'm not saying I should do it over them by any means, but, you know, we're here to kind of support you, whatever you guys decide. Those would probably be the pluses I could maybe give. We already are out in the community a lot, like we turn away outreach events because we can't meet the needs sometimes. So, you know, that's also a plus too, that, you know, we don't really talk about animal control a whole bunch, but I mean, we used to when we did it years ago. So that's kind of another plus. Another thing is that we're certified with wildlife. So, you know, I mean, we're pretty, I'm not saying we're gonna go and crawl under people's porches because we wouldn't do that either. But I mean, we do handle wildlife on a regular basis that come in. So I guess you would just have maybe a little more expertise, but could you guys get there eventually in that area? Possibly. I you know, I don't know. So that, I'm no way saying that you shouldn't go that route. I'm just saying, yes, it would probably cost you a little bit more. You would probably have a little bit more built-in animal welfare expertise in there. All of our licensing, you know, we're already licensed for all that. We already have a pound license. We already have an agricultural license. We already have DEA license. If you have something in them that needs to come in, that needs to be euthanized, you know, we do that, you know, so. You know, I don't know that I could do it for what they could do it.
And sounds like regardless, there's a lot of overlap because it's on the public safety regardless is always working closely with animal control because of any of the times where there's a time where it's an enforcement. If there has to be an animal taken from the site, sounds like we always go with. I tried to talk to a few people that worked around animal control. And so, like you said, it's pros and cons to everything. I think it's just a matter of what we think best addresses what we're looking to do as a community. And from my standpoint, it's always been what we'll make sure we're providing the level of service that, you know, as a pet owner, but also as a community, I think prides ourselves on being pet friendly. And wanting to make sure people that move here feel we're pet friendly, what's going to provide that level of service.
Probably the downfall for us that where you guys would have to pick up is animal night call would not be feasible. If we did it, I don't feel that night call would be feasible for us to do because like we talked before, you'd have to be, I don't think you have a lot of night calls like after hours, so you'd be paying somebody just to be on call, for 5 calls a night, so. So with us, that would be another aspect that the police department, I mean, they'd probably have to do some of that, which they would probably be doing if you were only having an animal control officer till 6 o'clock at night anyway. But, and then we're also pretty well versed in like your court cases and neglect charge, all of that sort of stuff. We also have a veterinarian on staff, or we have 3 veterinarians on staff, so those would be the perks that you would get with this. So.
Do you guys, off the top of your head, chief, know the number of night calls that we've gotten of all those calls? I don't. Can you just go through them all again?
It's, obviously it's a lower number because when you get to the number of where it's the busiest from 10 AM to 6 PM, well, it's because people are up, animals and people are having conflict, and that's why the people are calling in, so.
If we have calls after dark, it's barking,
Yeah.
which law enforcement handles anyway, so.
And I know we're not here just about the numbers too, but I do have number breakdowns of what it's cost us to, if you guys care, so.
When you talk about the wild animals that predominantly catch and release somewhere, put a box trap, live trap, and then relocate them.
We don't relocate wildlife.
What do you do with the wildlife?
We either send it to rehab or we euthanize it. We don't personally relocate it. We,
I mean,
either,
if a raccoon is in the attic and you catch it, you euthanize it?
so it would either go, we don't do that right now. This is what I'm saying, like
I
years,
thought you mentioned that you did.
years ago we did.
Okay.
When we did animal control, but now we don't go out in the field and do wildlife. We handle wildlife a lot because animal control, like, will bring that to us, or citizens will bring
I
that
mean,
to us.
injured.
Correct,
Okay.
yes. We
Right.
don't handle any nuisance.
If they're in a window well, and like you mentioned, you put a board down there and they crawl out,
Right,
hopefully if
right,
not, then
so-
you gotta.
Now, years ago, when we did animal control, we also did, actually, we were licensed and we did do nuisance calls. And we would charge the homeowner like $25 or whatever, and we would go in and remove those because we were licensed. And then we would do that. We would, like, if it was healthy, we'd release it, or injured, we'd, euthanize it, or babies or whatever, we would send to the rehab or whatever. So, yes, we did do that years ago, so.
Because it does sound like right now, nuisance, it's very difficult, because I know for Black Hawk Wildlife, they won't come capture animals. They'll take them if you capture them and bring them in. I think that is one that it's just very hard to find anyone that comes out to do that anymore.
That was easy for us to do when we did animal control. And the reason we did that is because it's, it was pretty easy for us to be licensed because we already meet a lot of the animal handling standards. So we did get a license to be, I don't remember, I think it was like, we were technically considered a rehabber, but we didn't, rehab. You have to be licensed to actually transport wildlife, that type of thing. And then, I mean, it did help us bring in even a little bit of revenue, not a lot, but I mean, we would charge the homeowner. It's like, well, we don't come remove squirrels from your fireplace or whatever was in the fireplace, but for $50 fee or whatever, we'll come do that. And we would have all the equipment and we would do that. So I think the only thing we did not do is, skunks, we did not handle skunks. If we did, then DNR got involved because they carry rabies. They're pretty popular, and I mean, animals that carry rabies. So they never allowed us to release them. We'd have to take them to DNR and then they would dispose of them. But we used to relocate raccoons and squirrels and birds and rabbits and all that. So.
Let's get worried about rabbits.
Well, if you have a nest of babies in somebody's yard and the dogs dig them up and, so, and then again, we would work with wildlife rehab, since we would be the ones to go out and get them, because Teresa and them, they're not licensed to do that either. Then we would take them to rehab, or we bring them to the shelter and then pick them up. So, yeah.
And I did have one resident call with some concerns around, specifically goats. So for a lot of livestock animals, I know we've had a few calls of, I think, some goats getting loose. I don't know if you have any background on those specific calls, but it sounded like there was just some concerns about, well, there wasn't really a standard procedure of what you do with livestock that gets loose, because there's not many people that will take it and care for it till it gets found of who the homeowner is. Do you guys, or any thoughts on our end of how do we handle those types of calls, knowing we live in a, where there's very big rural surrounding community.
Through the years, we've had unusual calls like that, and we usually start by calling me inside and saying, do you have any point of contact? Do you have a farmer that'll take them? But we've had, you have pigs that fall out of trailers and calves and things. That's happened through the years. And so,
So we can take about anything. We cannot take pigs because there's new rules, agricultural line, or rules around that with pseudo rabies and stuff like that. So we cannot even have a pig on our property.
Potbelly or
No.
farm animal,
Both.
pig, or, okay.
Yep, you cannot, we are not licensed for that. But we can take, pretty much anything except for obviously your large livestock, we just, where we gonna put that at. We've taken goats before. Again, sometimes we run into a problem like where are we gonna put it, but we usually try to have resources to try to find places,
I'll
so.
say a horse gets loose and nobody knows whose it is. That's probably kind of rare.
Christie has horses. She can have them.
She knows volunteers.
horses do get loose all the
Yes,
time,
they
but
do.
it seems like people figure out where they belong.
Right. So, I mean, most people, yeah, it's kind of hard to.
Within a couple miles, somebody will point it out and say it belongs.
I was gonna say, it's kind of hard to hide a horse, but I mean, even reptiles, I think you guys called, was it a week ago or whatever, and brought us a bearded dragon, that type of thing,
Mhm.
so.
Yep.
I mean, things like that we deal with, so. So that would probably be the only, and not that you don't have that, if you guys do animal control, you still do have us as a resource, but, if we did it, it would just be all one service. It wouldn't be like two different, if somebody picks up something instead of trying to, okay, now what do we do with that? I mean, there's always that issue, but.
I imagine regardless, if we had it in-house, it would be these two individuals would have a very close connection working with you, probably more so than like the normal PSOs don't have time to build that ongoing relationship. Like if we had
Absolutely.
specialized expertise.
Mark and I.
Yeah.
We talk a lot, so.
And we would want our employees out at the Humane Society all the time to visit, so that they're comfortable and they're a resource for them.
Mhm.
Well, and then, like for us, the Waterloo Animal Control Officers work pretty closely with, with our staff, so that having that type of a relationship is, Do you foresee any of your, this is probably a dumb question, but do you foresee any of your current police officers being interested in that? Probably not, because it's a step down position. I just know that a lot of there are some of your staff that they do a good job and they voice that they really like doing it, so.
No, they would.
Mhm.
They can be the after hours backup.
Yeah.
So thoughts? So no, we've kind of got,
Going in the right direction here.
so we've always got the option of working with Cedar Bend. I think our decision is, do we want to look at the internal option? That's been proposed and give some direction to have staff run through more details there, bring us back a proposal. And that can be a conversation, and when that's brought back of, do we feel this meets the needs and expectations? If it doesn't at the time, we could say, send it back and we want to see this change, or look at it, we could say, okay, no, we'd rather go with Cedar Bend. Again, not saying that's what we want to do, but well, how would you guys like to?
And again, if I can say, Mayor, too, that's our relationship with Cedar Bend would not change.
Yeah.
I think that's important to remember. We're just creating a couple positions where we have a closer relationship, and they would be our liaisons to Christie and her staff, and to make that a lot smoother. So it's, this started for us last fall when we were notified that we weren't gonna have animal control in 40 days or whatever it was. And, I think with some mistakes, but we really have put our best foot forward. And we are to a point doing the evaluation we said we would do. And I think that's what's led to this proposal. This is where we feel it needs to go. We feel we can do this in-house, and that we think it's a viable option if given the opportunity. So.
And for the record, I'm not vying against that we wanted against them. I just, we're happy to work with you guys in any capacity. I mean, we have our own stuff that we do, whether we do animal control or not. So, I mean, we're not sitting here saying either that, oh, you should bring it to us either. I mean, we will help in any capacity, you know, we just want to see it succeed because, you know, for us, the community, Cedar Falls is important to us, you know, the animals are important to us and, you know, we hear some of I mean, when things don't go right either way, we have to step in and help with that with the animals too. And we want to be that. So, I mean, so yeah, for the record, it's not necessarily us against that decision. Like, we're not sitting here saying that we definitely, or we think we should have it. It was asked and that's, you know, we could definitely do it, but I just don't think it would probably be within the same budget that you guys probably have.
And I do appreciate that because I wanted to make sure we had the options.
Right.
So that we can make a decision based on knowing everything that's on the table and what we think will genuinely serve the community best. Because I do think my biggest concern going into was making sure we have expertise, training in place to make sure the people doing the work, this is what they do. They know the work, they're certified, they're trained. And I think what I've heard, I think addresses a lot of that. And I know it's then looking at what are some of the other things that we can build into the positions when we do it internally to add some value. But so you three, what are your thoughts kind of on?
Well, I was looking at the number 91K. That's not the total cost. That's just for the 2 positions and an office assistant going up to full time. And
If we went to, that would be down the road, the office assistant, but that would be in lieu of also losing the 2 CSOs, which would be a negative 45,000, which you take from that 91.
Okay.
And these are rough numbers.
Yeah.
That's if
for
they're
sure.
working 29 hours a week. That's, but the office assistant position becoming full-time at some point, that's because of this losing the 2 CSOs. There are times during the week, Monday through Friday, we have to have CSOs come in the daytime. If the other office assistant was full-time, that need would no longer be there. That's where the reduction, we believe, we can make that work.
So then your total number to running the animal control part of it is how much higher than the 91?
I think right now our budget's 125.
Yeah, 25.
That's for.
So I have, over the last 5 years, our part that we paid the Cedar Run Humane Society has went from, between $37,000 and $46,000. So we always have that.
Say that again. 30.
Between 36 or 47,000, those 5 years. And it just varies on the amount of animals that are going through there. And then it's our staff or paying Waterloo besides that. But for the last 5 years, our total animal control costs went from 110,000 to 130,000. And right now we're budgeted right at that 125. So.
But that was paying the Waterloo Animal Control on top of Cedar
Yeah.
Valley Humane Society. So
Okay. And Christie, you have a note here, you don't dispose of dead deer. Who does that? You guys do.
We do that
Our
through
public
public works.
works.
Yeah.
Now, but I know 5-6 years ago,
Waterloo did that as part of their animal control
that was,
last year.
okay.
And it's not that we wouldn't, it's just, because we dispose of all the small animals, but we incinerate our animals. We just don't have something that would hold the deer. Does that make sense?
That's different. 5-6 years ago, when I was first on council, I helped get rid of a deer. And I thought I called you folks to get it.
So we used to pick them up when we did animal control. Well, we did animal control for Cedar Falls, Waterloo. And our contract was we picked it up and then we took it to, for a while we took it to rendering and then they changed that to landfill or whatever. So you guys kind of piggybacked on Waterloo's. We just picked up your stuff, charged you, and then we disposed it.
Evolved, okay.
Mr. Mayor, 2 things. One, just housekeeping note on the task force formulation. We needed a recommendation by the 2nd. Do we need to amend that? Or is that just a moot point?
Yeah, I think I can just amend that with it, but we wanted to set that so at least we kept on a timeline. But we knew, since we could schedule in time, that we'll push that back, but that was one outcome of today is figuring out when do we want that recommendation to come back in that proposal.
I think, I don't want to short cycle any conversation, but I think as a recommending body, the task force could say, I'd like the motion that we develop a job description and move forward with this plan for the time being. I don't know if we set a revisit in the next, 12 months, but have that recommendation come out by the end of October. Is that too short term?
What do you guys
How
feel
long
like
does
is
it
a
take to
realistic,
develop a job description?
feasible timeline to?
Well, I think what we
Job
want,
description might be a little bit longer just because the way we develop it, and then it has to go out to a third party to get scored and some of those things. So, but I think we could be, and I don't want to push Chief Howard too far, but I think they can be ready maybe first or second meeting in October to come back to the full council.
And then that'd be kind of with a proposal of here's how we would structure it. Not 100% details, but kind of
A
general.
recommendation of direction. I think I'm giving my assent to the plan that is presented for now. I don't know what the other two.
Sounds good. Thumbs up.
Yeah, I think this is the best option, especially because they can do other things, you know, and I think like you mentioned, it's like, obviously you're just not gonna have as many calls, you know, in January. And so to have other tasks that they can work on, I think is hugely beneficial to our staff, but also just to our community as well. And continuing on this close relationship with the Humane Society, I think, you know, from what we heard from the public, that was, you know, I think they were kind of calling out to you to say like, please, you know, help us with finding a solution because we, you know, want to make sure we're receiving the best for our animals. And I think that this plan will ultimately result in that, you know, while also keeping in mind that those same people are also paying taxes, you know, so I think, you know, everybody has their requests, everybody has the things that they want, and everything costs money. And so I think this kind of gives you the best of both worlds, you know, you're not gonna have to increase folks' taxes, but you're gonna get that service that you're really wanting. And so I'm totally in support of this, and I really appreciate the two of you bringing this for us, and especially Chief Howard for putting this together, and, you know, the time that your staff is already dedicated to this, and that you're willing to, you know, continue and make it something that is even better, I think is great. So thank you.
And I did want a quick, since I think we're kind of getting to the point of making a formal motion to go that way. Want to make any public comment? Cynthia?
Am I good where I'm sitting?
Yep.
Okay, my name is Larissa Beck. I'm a registered veterinary technician and a Cedar Falls resident. I want to thank everyone for being here to examine this important issue. I also want to express my gratitude that Cedar Falls authorities are aware of and in support of community cats that have been TNR'd. You know, as I've been sitting and listening to the city's proposal, I do have concerns. First being, the officers would be reporting to a superior who is not a subject matter expert. I don't know if you've ever been in a position where you had to ask your boss a question and you know more about it than them. Not a good situation for success. Speaking as a veterinary technician, when you have an aptitude and an interest in animal care, you're in it for the animals, not to be a building inspector. I liked the direction that the mayor was suggesting, where this hired position could use their downtime for community outreach rather than doubling as a building inspector. To me, it's just setting up for another situation where we have a jack of all trades, master of none, which has not been successful, has not been loudly successful under the PSO model. I had to voice my concerns about that. It sounds to me like Christy would be ready to, she already has trained boots on the ground. There would be less of a delay in getting that going in a successful manner. In regards to the question of loose livestock, it sounds a little silly and out there, but consider what just occurred in Pleasant Hill with the water buffalo that was loose. They didn't have a plan in place. It got bungled terribly. It was on the worldwide news. It did not look good for the officers. So even if it doesn't seem like an issue that's ever going to happen, you need to have a plan in place anyway, so that you don't end up in that position. I understand that cost increases were the primary reason for eliminating contracted animal care and control. But animal care and control is a vital civic service that should never be looked upon as an opportunity for cost savings. My question is, why reinvent the wheel? Having attended these proceedings, it's clear there is a subject matter expert in the room. Cedar Bend Executive Director Christy Gardner has been kind enough to provide her expertise and ongoing support. A great deal of time could be saved and trust gained back by Cedar Falls residents if we would simply place this service in her very capable hands. Thank you.
Thank you, Larissa. Okay. So any other discussion from, is at this point really anyone before we, I mean, just kind of made a formal motion, but we'll do a formal motion if you're okay with that to make sure we have it. Any more discussion?
Second.
Okay, so Dustin, do you want to recap what you were recommending?
Yeah, formal motion to proceed with the development of a job description and formalization of the undetailed big plan
I second that.
that was presented.
Did you get that, Katie?
The verbiage you can wordsmith if you want.
I don't know if it's,
I think it's worth just mentioning too, I don't, it's not lost on me, I think for the cost here, it's, what we were paying, 120-ish, 130-ish, going up to 400 and something was untenable. Sitting somewhere, it's 600, 400%. I mean, it was completely untenable and knee-jerk reaction. I think while I don't want to have a bunch of jacks of all trades, I do think that there's an opportunity there, especially if this were formulated more around animal wellness services, whether you call it animal wellness specialist or animal husbandry specialist, whatever, versus animal control. I think that's something that we can do where I do understand the switch gears on doing building inspection as well, but part of that is going to afford us the opportunity to keep a keen eye on all holistic wellness for animals and citizens alike. I think if the costs were somewhere closer to that 175, that's something we might look at. So if there's in the interim an opportunity to come back with a formal proposal that isn't 350, closer to what we were tolerating before, that's probably something that we can entertain. I just think you're right. It's a bit outside of our target for now. And I do agree with Chief Howard that they want to continue that collaboration. So I don't think that this is a finished conversation just because this is the direction we might move.
if I can just second on that, I do like, no matter which way we move forward, I like to think of it more as, what's the word you used? Animal welfare versus animal control. Because I know a lot of times it's easy to just focus on the control piece. They're there to just, everything people see on TV, they show up, they capture it. But anyway, we can make sure, no matter how we design the service, that's not just we're there to capture animals and take them to Cedar Bend. It's how does this actually contribute to the pet-friendly community piece, animal welfare. I think that can be done in-house. So I don't know if we need that as formal direction in there, but I do think I'd like to, at least from my standpoint, I'm not a voting member, just like a council. But I want to make sure it's not just the animal control piece, but that we're building in that welfare piece, whether that's just a close relationship with Cedar Bend and making sure we have a really close working relationship, which it sounds like you guys have really focused on and done a good job of already to this point.
And probably adding animals that are available for rescue at the public safety open house.
Hey, we did it for Waterloo.
Oh, did you?
So,
That could be a one-off resolution.
well, and for us to, for price, I mean, if it's ever something where you're like, hey, give me an exact proposal, and this is where we'd like to stay. I'm not saying we can't do it, but like, I did this on like, I have to buy my own van. I have to do, whatever. Like I said, if it's something that you guys are serious about and you think, hey, I would like to try to hit this price. I don't know that I can do it, but I mean, if there would have to be discussions like, okay, you provide the vehicle, you provide the equipment, you provide the, do we need, like the radio services? Like, so it just depends. Can I get my gas to the city? I'm not saying it's not possible, but I base that off of like you basically saying, hey, you do it all, and we do everything, and take on all those startup costs. So I'm not saying if that's ever an interest that it's not possible. I just, my biggest concern is you have to be able to pay decent staff to do the job. You can't hire somebody for $10, $15 an hour to do this type of a job. And have, expect them to have the expertise and be out in the public and dealing with the citizens and handling the animals and, doing the animal welfare things in the schools and all that. You just cannot hire, somebody for $10 an hour to do that. And so that would be my biggest thing. So, I'm not gonna go and do all that if that's not something you're interested in, but obviously if that is ever something you're interested in, please reach out to me and we can, see what we can do, but.
Well, and I think public safety has a track record of, listening to their staff and, there are so many opportunities that staff is afforded that I think, in most workplaces, you don't have that opportunity, whether it's education or just, this very open line of communication. And, it's like if they had folks already expressing like, hey, this isn't really something that we want to be doing. And, you guys heard them out and said, yeah, like, we get it. And so we're going to make a change. Like we already were planning this review. And so I think if ultimately we hear from the person like, hey, I don't want to keep doing this if I have to do inspections. Like, I don't think that's going to fall on deaf ears. So, I think again, it's evolving. It doesn't, just because this is the conversation today, doesn't mean this is what it is forever. So, and Christy, I think we appreciate that you would be willing to do that. I think it sounds like we're going to proceed with this option, but if, in a year we decide this isn't something we want to keep doing, then maybe we follow up with that.
Like frankly, we could find out in 3 months that we can't hire anybody.
Right,
So
Mhm.
it's just not a closed door.
exactly.
And in the interim, work here, obviously, I sometimes have time constraints, but, obviously, if you ever need help with input on job descriptions or this or that, we've done all of that stuff. So, and Mark knows that, we're willing to help if we can. So.
Understanding that she does have extra. And she has responsibilities she needs to do, and we can't go in the hole.
I do appreciate you guys being here to.
Yeah, yeah, they stop volunteering for everything.
I completely understand that, Christie.
Years
I
ago.
understand you have other, I
Mark's
understand that.
Mark's pretty respectful. Yeah, I
I have that issue myself.
yeah, Mark's pretty respectful. I can't say, even the officers, they're very respectful, I don't have any issues, helping when they reach out, so.
Yeah, so Mark, if you go back through those calls and tell us how many were at night, it'd be great.
Do that.
Well, not part of the formal.
But still,
I think we would be negligent if we didn't do the due diligence that we're doing here to pursue and dig into this. I think it's the proper thing to do. And then compare and contrast from there. It's an evolving process.
so quick, because I do want to make sure we put a timeline to it. So we got that motion. Do we want to put a specific date we'd like to, again, with your guys' input? So we're thinking maybe,
By the second meeting in October. If you're ready for the first meeting, present. If you're not,
And I would think the only thing that might take time would be, like Ron said, the job description, but having the plan with more details, absolutely.
Yeah, that's all we're looking for.
Yeah.
That portion of the council is okay. We're gonna
Second council meeting?
Yeah.
Yeah.
21st October.
get you past mid-month there. I was just gonna supplant other stuff. I'm just as okay with the first of November.
I think we should be okay. I don't think it's,
We should be good.
yeah.
That's fine with me.
When you guys let us know if you need anything from us.
Well, definitely will. All right, so we got a motion and seconded. Do we have a second, Katie?
You did, okay.
So all those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
3 votes.
3 votes. Okay. If there's any other discussion before we close everything out?
Thank you for all the work that's gone into this. I know it's been a pivotal year responding. I think we're gonna get to a better place within the next year or two where we're proactive again. So that'd be a good place to be in.
And thank you, guys. I know you guys have put a lot of time in trying to make sure we keep this on a moving timeline so it doesn't stall out and we get this done as soon as we can. I appreciate it. All right. Otherwise, I don't think we need a motion to adjourn, so we're adjourned.